The best part of waking up is Star Wars in your cup. Or
Yes.
local theater, you know.
Hi, hi everyone, and welcome to the Council of the Whills. Your podcast today will be brought to you by Not Folgers. Um,
We have no sponsor.
we have none. I'm Jen.
I'm Jane,
And I'm Amber.
and today we're going to be doing our time capsule episode. We got this idea a few months back to record what we think was going to happen in The Last Jedi, and then after we've all seen it, re-listen to this and go, oh, we were wrong, or whoa, we were right. But this episode,
Not to sound overconfident, but I'm going to err on the right.
I mean, all the marketing has been pretty spot on.
So far, we seem pretty good, but we'll see.
The format of this episode is going to be a little bit different. Instead of just going from news to, crackpot theories, we're kind of just going to go down through a list of points and debates and rumors. And each of us is going to say, do we think it's going to happen? Do we not think it's going to happen? And what we think is going to happen. So the big question that everyone seems to be talking about the most is, who are Rey's parents? Even though we did a full episode on it, that was before like the big onslaught of media. So has that changed for any of you guys?
Absolutely. I was very much like on the Rey Kenobi train for a hot minute. I do think there's still a lot of symbolism within Rey and her connection to the Force and its similarities to Obi-Wan. And I do think it's kind of strange that they would have both a cut piece of Alec Guinness's dialogue and a brand new line recorded by Ewan McGregor if she doesn't have some sort of connection to Obi-Wan. But at the same time, like, I've kind of definitely reached this point where I still want her to be connected to Obi-Wan just because I like the narrative poetry of the whole thing. But at this point, I'm getting to be more confident that she's not related to anybody that matters.
I would like her to just be completely and utterly random. I would like her to be related to somebody that is not a Skywalker, just to sort of be able to look at some people who are like, she's totally a Skywalker because this is a Skywalker saga, so clearly she must be a Skywalker. And I'm like, you have one. He's 6'3" and brooding.
He's a Scorpio.
He's a Scorpio. He loves his mom. He calls her often on space Skype. um, it's almost like I just want her so much to be not a Skywalker that while I'm like, oh, Kenobi would be really cool, Palpatine would be really interesting to talk about the whole, it plays very much into their marketing of choose your destiny motif, because that is, Kylo Ren / Ben Solo doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be evil, because he has both in his bloodline. Whereas Rey, if she is a Palpatine, then has to be evil, or has to be dark side, excuse me. But I would like having to be no one, or just some like random Imperial officers that happen to just be there would be great too.
Speaking of Imperial officers, we talked about this after we recorded our last episode, but what do you guys think of the two main characters in Battlefront 2, Iden and don't remember the other guy's name, but
Del Meeko.
There we go. Do we think that Iden and Del are Rey's parents?
For one thing, I feel like, and I don't know, this could be just like my social justice warrior kind of side coming out, but I personally don't want it to be, specifically because I'm really uncomfortable with the fact of a white woman playing a half Indian woman. Not that those nationalities exist within Star Wars, but socially it would be a little problematic. But on the other end, I believe somebody went through like the source code for the game and found out that it's not going to be Rey. But that could just be whatever. But I mean, long story short, like, it would be interesting way to reveal her parentage. Like, you know, you think you're just getting a game about these two people, and then you get to the movie and they just say these names, and like the casual fan will be like, oh, okay, her parents were Imperials who defected to the rebellion. That makes sense. I completely understand. Oh, sorry, Battlefront 2 spoilers.
Okay. Question just in general, because this happened to me last year at work. I think it was a month after The Force Awakens was out, and we loudly said in the office, Kylo Ren kills Han Solo. And this wasn't last year, it was 2 years ago. And a coworker was like, no, I haven't seen the movie, spoilers. I'm like, it's been a month. So
No, by that point you done messed up. Like, go see the damn movie.
Yeah, there's usually
yeah, so how
I would say there's
yeah,
usually a
how
2 week grace period.
so maybe we're still good because I feel like the 2 weeks have passed.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of a difference between watching a 2.5 hour movie and playing a game, you know? But
That's
I mean,
true.
but anyway, you know, the movie could easily reveal like, oh, her parents were Imperials who defected to the rebellion, and then if you really want to know more about them, you can play Battlefront 2. It's not, you know, it makes them, it gives it an opportunity for you to know their story without having to know their story in order to understand Rey's. But I just don't think it's them. I think that would be kind of a, it would be interesting, and it is kind of what I think her parents might be, Imperials who either stayed Imperial or defected. But I don't know. I just, the whole thing kind of makes me feel kind of, eh.
Yeah. It makes sense, but at the same time, you're like, ooh, are we going to, ooh, yeah, no, let's not do that. Can we make it some
Yeah.
other Imperials? Some other ones that look like Dumbo Gleason?
And I agree with both of you that I think that she's just going to be Rey Nobody. Most likely, I think she is somehow related to the Imperials, or else why would she have been left on Jakku? You know what I mean? It's the most logical explanation for why she was on Jakku of all places.
Yeah.
I'm not really emotionally invested in, Rey Skywalker or Rey Solo or Rey Kenobi or, Rey Palpatine. I'm not emotionally invested in who her parents are. I'm emotionally invested in who her parents aren't. Because I'm vehemently opposed to her being a Skywalker or a Solo, even though all the evidence points contrary to it. A good majority of the Star Wars, especially the hardcore fans, think that she is related to Luke, and I would be really just let down if it's like, oh, it's another Skywalker, or surprise, Han and Leia had twins, even though they didn't. But yeah.
Well, and consider the fact that Luke even, or not Luke, that Mark even said that this isn't his story anymore, you know? Like, and so in order to explain how Luke managed to make some sort of uber powerful child, you would have to completely derail Rey's story and turn it into Luke's. And then it would become about Luke reconciling with his daughter. Because, you know, I'm very much of the opinion that the original trilogy. I'm very much of the opinion that the original trilogy was just as much Vader's story as it was Luke's. I think that you would have to turn the sequel trilogy into Luke's story in order to make sense of Rey being a Skywalker.
Not only that, but if they make her related to anyone that we know in the series, they're going to have to go back and shoehorn in canon and make sure it fits with every tiny little detail. And that's a lot of work.
Yep, because Rey has met, you know, every single Skywalker at this point. Not one of them reacted in any sort of way to her.
Exactly. And they'd have to explain, oh, well, why did Luke or Han or Kylo or Leia insert Skywalker here? Why did said Skywalker leave her on a planet? Why did they abandon her? Why did they not go look for her? Why did they leave her in the hands of someone who, abuses her and talks down to her and starves her? So it's like, it doesn't make sense, and it would feel too much like fan service and too much having to just shoehorn in canon that doesn't fit.
Also consider, shortly after The Force Awakens came out, Matt Martin, a member of the story group, was talking to a fan on Twitter, and he basically shot down the idea of Rey Skywalker because he asked the guy, he was like, do you really think that Luke would leave his daughter on Jakku? And the fan was like, no, I was thinking maybe more like it was Ben or her mother. And Matt Martin says, and you think he wouldn't go looking for her? Impossible.
Exactly. Well, like, even like
So,
Pablo and Matt have just been shooting down, and Daisy. And I think, yeah, even John Boyega just recently shot down a Rey parentage theory. So it's no one we know.
yeah, he shot down Rey Kenobi, which was painful, but, we all live.
Exactly.
I mean, it makes sense. And I just sit here and I kind of like it because it's a fun one that isn't a Skywalker. And it means that at some point she can stand over Kylo and say, I have the high ground.
But, yeah, I think Rey Nobody is pretty much the most logical conclusion at this point.
So, what's the next point we want to talk about?
I guess Ben Solo redemption is kind of one of the questions a lot of people have now,
Yes.
especially after all of this marketing. Adam going around and basically talking about a lot of things. People just kind of wonder what's going to happen with his character now.
I think it's kind of a given that Kylo is going to be redeemed. If Kylo was not going to be redeemed, everything that has come out since The Force Awakens would portray this like pampered, spoiled, bratty kid who had everything, whose parents loved him, who did him no wrong, who did him no injustice, just arbitrarily decides to go kill a bunch of kids and then kill his father. That would be the backstory to, this heartless villain that they're setting him up to be, or that not that they're that he would have been set up to be if he wasn't getting redeemed. Anti-heroes are a big trend, and people love tragic backstories and villains with intrigue, and yeah.
I completely agree. Ryan Johnson in one of his interviews was saying, like, what's the point of getting behind the mask, of getting to know this character, if he's just going to stay evil and then die? Which I think suggests that Ryan doesn't really think of Kylo Ren becoming Ben Solo again so much as a will he or won't he, but a why wouldn't he?
Well, and I think also today, I don't know if it was today, but I just saw it today. There was a comment about people asking about stuff from, The Last Jedi and assuming that The Last Jedi was written right after The Force Awakens premiered, like came out. And so it was all done and finished and people had reacted and they had seen fans' reactions. And then all of a sudden it was, I believe it was Pablo Hidalgo going like, they started writing The Force Awakens or not The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi when The Force Awakens was in production. So everything that you think that we're pandering to fans is untrue. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying we wrote this while The Force Awakens was being filmed. Like, it wasn't we saw the reactions people were having and decided to move the characters this way. It's no, we took the story that we had finished and was a go and continued it.
Yeah, it wasn't reactive in any way. It was because Ryan said he started working on this back in 2014, which matches up with that, whole scenario. And I know that there were some rewrites for The Last Jedi right after The Force Awakens came out, before they started production on it. And people were like, oh, they're changing this because fans didn't like this, and they're doing this because, fans didn't like this. But I believe Ryan came out right at the beginning and it was like, no, 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 we're not changing anything based on fan reaction. We're changing things based on, the continuity of the film and the final product, and, making sure that we do tell the best story possible.
I remember that. Wasn't it? Didn't it have to do with making sure that the focus wasn't put too much on the new characters, and it was staying with the characters that were established in The Force Awakens?
Yeah, I think there was a kind of a balance issue with the new character, like that I suppose became Kelly Marie Tran and possibly Holdo and whatnot. I think there was an imbalance of importance. And I think Ryan Johnson maybe also, and this is just hypothetical, I think possibly he wrote the Force story and the Resistance story to be kind of more of like an equal measure of importance. And then I think he kind of realized that the Force story is actually what the real bread and butter actually is for the story, and change things up in that regard.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
But overall, I saw a post on Tumblr today that really kind of made me laugh because I was like, that's completely right. It said that Leia wants her son home, and Snoke wants her son to stay evil and die for the First Order. And so it's kind of one of these things like, are you Team Leia or are you Team Snoke? Like, who do you want to agree with in that regard? And I think that's a really interesting way of putting it, because it is kind of this sort of thing where, like, you can hate Kylo Ren all you want. You can think he's a weak character, which you're wrong, but I mean, you're free to think that. And you can think that he deserves to die for what he did for Han, but at the end of the day, like, Leia wants her son home. Mothers put up with all kinds of dumb shit that their kids do, and they still love them. And so, yes, this is a huge tragedy, but I don't think that Leia's going to be the kind of person who's like, well, you're evil, screw you, hope you die. So, it is kind of this sort of thing, like, what do you want for Leia at the end of the day? Like, do you want her to lose all of her family? Or would you
And,
like her to have one little smidge of happiness?
and I mean, kind of on that, like, because I talked about it this past weekend, like, I was always angry at old EU Leia for naming her third child Anakin, because I didn't think she could forgive him in that way and that it would never um, happen. But that's kind of the Leia that we're seeing now, who's like, yeah, my kid has done terrible things. He's my son. Like, I just want him home. I just want to be able to hold him again. And that's sort of it's not the exact same thing, but it's the same type of forgiveness that you would kind of have to go through of, you've done bad things, I've done bad things. Yes, you'll have to pay for them as I've had to pay for them, but I think that's what fans are missing. They're missing the Leia that forgives. She's not very forgiving at times, and she can hold a grudge like it's her job, but she can hold a grudge to people that deserve it. And I have a feeling that she would not consider her son as somebody that deserves a grudge being held against them.
Didn't someone tweet Pablo, and I think I brought this up on an earlier episode, but someone tweeted Pablo and asked, will Ben be redeemed, and Pablo's, and that wasn't verbatim, I don't remember the exact wording, but Pablo's response was, Leia says there's still light in him. I have a tendency to believe Leia.
Yeah,
Exactly.
mothers tend to know their kids a little bit better than anyone else. And you do have to remember that Carrie Fisher, who helped write part of the script for The Last Jedi, or at least tweak it, said that Rey is incredibly forgiving. So in addition to Leia more than likely wanting her son back regardless of what's been done, you have Carrie Fisher talking about how forgiving Rey is. And we can see that, it just kind of depends on who you think has wronged Rey. Luke probably, is going to wrong her in some way, and I'm sure she may forgive him for that, but I think the person that had to relate to, especially given, Carrie's little Freudian slip afterwards when she started talking about her son, or started talking about, Ben at the very least, I think it has to be in relation to that. So if Leia is forgiving Kylo Ren and Rey is forgiving Kylo Ren, I think you can't ignore that and just say that redemption is not going to happen for him.
Oh, and if he isn't redeemed, then that means Han's death would be for nothing. And that's the part that's most insulting. A huge fan favorite that people love. And he died for his son, and if Kylo is just going to go on, doing it with the dark side, that Han's sacrifice would be nothing. It would mean nothing. And that's not what Star Wars is about. It's about hope. I don't think that is a route that they would go down for a character who wasn't going to be redeemed.
I totally agree with that.
It's what they should do.
On the note of Ben Solo's redemption, one of the pieces of evidence that people who don't want him redeemed use is the fact that he slaughtered all of Luke's students at the academy. However, there is a emergence of, a second contender for what actually went down at the academy, that, Ben Solo actually, had a tenuous grasp on his powers and his emotions, and the Vader reveal caused so much shock in him that he ended up exploding the Academy with the Force and killing everyone. And thus, after that happened, he was so horrified that happened that he just went to Snoke, who he believed could help him control his powers better. What do you guys think is more likely? Do you think we're going to get the backstory of like a heartless villain who killed all of the other Jedi, or do you think we're going to get a story of someone who was way too powerful for his own good and scared to death of it?
I think with everything that we've seen and heard that it's the latter, because I can see Solo growing up and being like, there's a voice in my head telling me I can be better, but I'm also being told to hide what I can do and all this stuff. And that is perfectly normal, but be careful. And then having the moment of blowing up and having this incredible power after Leia has sent him off because, like, you cannot hide this anymore. You have to do something. And somebody saying, yeah, it's because you're better than everybody. I can see that appealing, but I can also see it being very much it's a blow up because he blows up a few other times, and that it's just like maybe that's why he physically lashes out in The Force Awakens, is because he now knows that if he doesn't physically lash out, then the Force lashes out for him, and he knows what it can destroy.
I actually never thought of that point, that that's part of why he has temper tantrums, for lack of a better word. And I agree that there's something more to what happened. I don't believe he just willy-nilly went there with the Knights of Ren and decided to kill everyone, a la Anakin. Another theory I've heard, although I do believe that the idea that Ben Solo just lost control, I do believe that theory to be true. But another theory I read that is really interesting is that when the Vader reveal happened, the other students at the Academy ganged up on him and left him no choice but to do what he did.
I can see that.
Like they all were coming to attack him, like to kill him, or?
Yeah, that's what I've read. That
Oh God, that's horrifying. Can you imagine being like just surrounded by people who were once, your friends, I guess, and just all of them turning on you because of who your grandfather happened to be?
that you had no
Ugh.
control over, that everyone lied to you about.
I mean, but Luke is also, Vader's son. Like, why? I can't imagine that would happen because the reveal would mean that they would have to turn on their, master as well.
Well, the theory I read said that Luke wasn't at the temple when it happened, and it's backed up by the shots of Luke walking to the temple. When you see him from behind, and he walks up to the temple, and it's on fire, or the academy, or whatever it was.
But he's also clawing himself out of rubble.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it is interesting. I mean, it could be a combination of the two. Like, rather than him, like, slaughtering everyone, perhaps, it just sort of happened that, Ben walked into, like, I don't know, the mess hall or wherever the hell they eat. And everybody's just, like, kind of staring at him. And he's like, oh, what's happening? And then one kid is just like, yo, you're Vader's grandson? And he's like, what? They're like, yeah, it's on the news or the HoloNet or whatever. And then everyone just starts talking shit to him, and he explodes before Luke has a chance to, like, get there to talk to him.
That's another.
And then, Luke doesn't understand what happened. All he sees is rage and something from Ben, and so he's like, I can't do anything for you. You're already dark.
And that's the other half of what we've read, at least on stuff that's on Reddit from people who claim that they've seen it. Who knows if it's true? We'll know next week if it's true, but that Luke basically told Ben to get lost, get out before I kill you, as a response to whatever it was that Ben did.
So heartbreaking.
I know, you just can't help but feel bad for the kid.
Yeah, man. And then I know we talked about this pretty extensively, last episode, but it does suck. It does suck to be a kid in his position, to just feel so completely lost and really have no one to go to except the one guy who's been like, no, you're wonderful, you're special, you're so important, you should hang out with me, everything is great.
And then to find out that maybe it's not everything that's cracked up to be, and you're still having the same problems you've been having. The Force didn't get any easier for him to wield with Snoke. It just got different. In a way, he still has his outbreaks, and he still has everything, and he still feels conflicted. So he's like, great, everything I was promised is not true.
Oh yeah, can you imagine, like, looking for answers between two masters and neither one of them is actually helping you. They're just, using, not using, but like, because I don't think that at any point Luke was using Ben. Though maybe he was, it could have been one of those situations where he saw like the raw, strength of the Force and thought that he could help him achieve some other sort of goal. But you're stuck between two masters. One is telling you to be, pure light, and you have another that's encouraging your dark side, even though he does, value the balance within him or whatever. You're kind of stuck between this idea of like, I'm not finding any sort of like peace between either of you. And so he's just kind of lost. And I think for someone who does have that power and those powerful emotions, and like you said, he has to do the temper tantrums, else the Force will, emerge from within him and do some destruction. God, it's just horrifying for that kid.
And it goes to the point where he's not fully in control of it. And not to say that he would have been more fully in control of it had he started when he was younger to learn how to use the Force, but it's one of those things where he's trying to retroactively control thing that he's sort of in a way controlled his entire life but also ignored. Because I mean, what we've seen in books about Leia is that she's been kind of in tune with the Force and controlling it in her own way her entire life, but it's been very subtly and in her own terms and everything, because she, it seems like, never thought about the Force in relation to herself. Like, she thought about it as this other thing that happens and people are connected to, but she never made the connection in her own. And the same thing with Luke, he never made the connection if he had anything as well. Whereas you have Ben Solo growing up, who knows he's connected to the Force, who knows people in his family are strong in it, who knows what he's feeling is this thing, and being told, it's okay, you don't have to embrace it. It's okay, you just have to deal with it in your own way. And he's like, I don't know how. I'm lost. And nobody being there to sort of guide him through it, because nobody's wanting to sit down and really do anything. And maybe it's also because Luke doesn't know how to teach a kid, because Luke is the master, or he's going off to find other masters out there if they survived and see what they can do, but he's never had to teach a kid. And that's a skill that maybe he doesn't have. We all assume he does because we've seen it in the old EU, but what if in the new canon he doesn't? He stands there, he's like, why are you here? Oh my god, I don't know how to deal with you. You are not a person.
I mean, that's a good point, is I think a lot of the reasons that people can't imagine Luke not being this like beacon of the light side is because they're attached to both the original trilogy Luke, who, wouldn't be tempted to the dark side, and the EU Luke, who, was so strong in the Force and so strong in his own convictions about it that you can't imagine him not being, Luke Skywalker. Right now, he's just what? Old man Luke? I mean, I guess we're kind of getting into some different, hypothetical plot points. But, I mean, you're totally right in the sense that Luke probably had no idea what to do with Ben, because his other students were probably far less powerful than he was, and so he's sitting here with a kid who may or may not be 18 according to some sort of sources, coming in and just being like, hey, I got immense power, what do I do with this? And then you got other kids who are like, look, move this pebble.
And it's kids. Like, we're just assuming that Luke is going to be okay with kids, and that Luke is going to sit there and just say, like, oh, yes, I could teach all the children, and you blah, blah, blah. But he has a natural talent that it's not that people are ignoring, but that is different than Johnny Planet person coming in and being like, I think I can move things with my mind sometimes. And it's like sort of Force sensitive, but he doesn't get it the same way, and it's taking longer than however Luke was on Dagobah, and he's just like, I don't get it, why aren't you learning? And it's because it's people learn at their own pace. Like, we're assuming that Luke is going to be like, yes, I will teach everyone. So
I also don't understand why Luke thinks he has any obligation to teach. I get it on one point, like, oh, okay, I'm the last person who's able to teach people. But I don't think that necessarily relates to being a good teacher.
Well, it's very true. Just because you're good at a subject, that does not mean that you are good at teaching. It takes a completely different skill set to be able to teach versus to be able to do. Being a good teacher requires that you have patience and you have understanding and you have the ability to relate with your students, on because of whatever level they're at, because of difficulties they may be having. You have to find a way to relate to them, or else you're just going to be that, old jerk teacher that everyone hated, like Snape,
Yeah, I'm able to understand that. Why can't you, child?
Exactly.
Not just that, but like I studied education in college. Like I was going to be a high school teacher, um, and there was a very different person between me and the people that were teaching that were going for elementary, and they were I'm like I can't even just like I knew I was not an elementary person because I can stare at a kid and be like, why don't you? I've explained it 3 times. I've given you instructions. I don't get why you don't get this, and I get frustrated. Whereas they sit down with the kid and they will figure out other ways the kid learns. They'll work with them. They'll work with them one-on-one and do all this stuff. I'm like, that's not to say that I wouldn't do that. I would very much like to have a frank conversation with my student and say, okay, you and I both understand you are not getting this. What is something you do get? And have them explain to me what they do understand or where they're falling short. Whereas a small child won't do that. They'll just be like, I don't get it. And high schoolers will probably say, I don't get it. But every so often, it's like, well, I don't get it because I don't get X. And then you can explain X and hope to think things through. Like, I knew I could never do elementary because I just stare at them and I'm like, you're not. And I feel
See,
bad.
I can handle teaching, like, young kids, like I'm talking like preschool and elementary. I can handle that because I understand that they have no reason to know. I don't know. I don't do as well teaching adults as I do small children because
I mean,
I hate everyone.
well, I think there's also a difference in between because there are times when I talk to coworkers. I'm like, I've explained this to you 5 times. It's been the same way the past 5 times, and they still forget it. And I'm like, why? You're older than me.
But this is a good segue into something that I wanted to ask. Since the first Entertainment Weekly article said that Luke was convinced that Ben was the chosen one, do we think Rey is going to be the chosen one? And how is that going to work?
We just
I
fucking
personally,
stop with.
we were just gonna say the exact same thing. I'm on this kind of thing where, like, Anakin had this whole idea of I mean, wait, did Anakin know he was the chosen one? I don't remember.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I love how I'm thinking that there's a scene where he says, I'm the chosen one, but I'm 99% sure that's actually Harry Potter. I'm thinking.
That is exactly where I was. But I am the chosen one. Shut the fuck up, Harry.
I swear there's also, like, he knows, Anakin knows, like, because I think it's in Phantom Menace that he's like, he's the chosen one. And you're like, cool beans, don't tell a child that.
Oh. Did they get rid of Anakin? Or, like, get rid of Anakin? Did they ask Anakin to leave the room before Qui-Gon was like, I believe he's the chosen one of the prophecy? Blah, 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 blah.
And it doesn't mean that Obi-Wan didn't tell him later.
Yeah, who knows? But, like, I just think this idea of, like, you're the chosen one. But, like, for what? Here's Luke with this whole idea of like, he already thought that balance was brought to the Force, that the Sith were destroyed, which I think is the stupidest idea of balance in the entire goddamn world, but whatever. But, like, what did he think he was the chosen one of? Did he find some other, like, Jedi prophecy that, like, said, like, oh, hey, there's gonna be this kid of, like, immense power, and so he's like, oh, shit, that's my nephew right there. My nephew's got immense power. He's the chosen one. I'm gonna make sure he knows he's the chosen one. And how do you sit there and not be like, hey, this kid that you have, Leia, I need to train him younger because I have this prophecy. Or because we sit there and we hear about in Bloodline how Luke and Ben are, like, traversing the galaxy, assumedly by themselves. Who is running this fucking academy, by the way? Like, did they find something while they were doing that? Like, is that when Luke started putting the pressure on? I need the backstory so badly. But long story short, like, I think that what we're gonna find out is that the idea of a chosen one is bunk.
Well, imagine sitting there and being like, I think my nephew is the chosen one, and Leia, practical, and Han of the Force mumbo jumbo crap going there and be like, my kid is what? Oh no. He's chosen because he hasn't fucking cleaned up his room in like 2 weeks, and he's chosen for getting to go do that and having C3PO babysit him for the next 2 days, which he hates. Like, that's how chosen he is right now. Clean up your goddamn toys, Ben. Like, I can imagine Luke being like, Ben is the chosen one, and Leia being like that worked out so well last time. Like, don't tell him that. Just don't tell him that. He's a kid. He's chosen to be my kid.
Leia, I think he's the chosen one. The fuck he is.
Fucking is. He grew all over my walls this morning.
I have this like really like crackpot fanon idea that there isn't going to be one chosen one, there's going to be two chosen ones because there's the light and the dark, and together they balance each other out.
Chosen ones.
Exactly, that way it'd be Kylo and Rey. So technically, neither one is correct, but both are correct.
I mean,
So
yeah.
it is that whole concept of, dual protagonist in the sense that, gotta bring balance to the Force and whatnot. Whatever the hell that means.
The two
I'm
Jedi?
over bringing balance to the Force. Break
Well, and
the
I mean,
Force.
and technically, we're gonna go all technicalities. Anakin sort of did bring balance to the Force, in that he tried to orchestrate the death of almost every single Force user that was not his master, and therefore kill off all the Sith and kill off all the Jedi, and in essence bring balance to the Force. In that the Force is like, well, fuck it, I don't have either of them.
Well, it's like there's two Jedi and there's two Sith. It's like, seems pretty even to me.
Yeah, so maybe he did bring balance to the Force. You're welcome. And then people are screaming right now at me. It's like, but what about Leia? It's like, yeah, well, maybe her midichlorians weren't as
Here's my biggest problem with the idea that destroying the Sith brings balance to the Force. There are people who are Force sensitive, like Leia and Maz Kanata, who are Force sensitive but aren't Jedi. And so it's kind of this thing, like, is the balance between the Jedi and the fucking normies, or what's going on here? Like, where is this balance? Where is the dividing line between balance?
kind of on top of that is every so often, people are like, yeah, Leia is Force sensitive. And what I also want to scream to them is yes, and sensitive to the dark side. Luke is sensitive to the light side, Leia is sensitive to the dark side, and that makes neither one of them better than the other. It just means that they're in tune something else. And like I can see Leia being a Sith, but not being. We assume Sith means bad. We assume Sith means I'm gonna go kill people, do all these bad things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means following a different code. Um, Whereas you can look at the Jedi code and be like, that's fucked up too. Um, it doesn't mean you're a good guy. It means that you are following this thing and you happen to be called the Peacekeepers of the Galaxy. Take that as
Well, that's kind of one of the things that I was thinking about is that I wonder if the whole idea of the Sith has been corrupted much the same as the idea of the Jedi. Because, I mean, in our prequels discussion, we kind of talked about how the Jedi aren't exactly, the beacons of good morality that everyone kind of assumes them to be if they're supposed to be the light side. And so I've wondered if perhaps the Sith have ended up in much the same way, in the sense that, yeah, we're not supposed to be taking over the galaxy, we're just not supposed to be, like, denying ourselves what we want, and it's just maybe gotten out of control. I don't know. I really hope that this series ends with, or this trilogy ends with no more Jedi and no more Sith.
Yeah.
Which, according to Ryan Johnson, Luke Skywalker is the final Jedi, as opposed to the Last Jedi, meaning only one left, until Rey. No, Luke is the final Jedi.
Well, Daisy said, I don't think Rey's a Jedi.
But I mean, I don't think she's. I mean, I think she wields a saber, and I think she tries to use the Force. Will she follow the Jedi code like Luke wanted to, and like everybody else kind of tried to do? I feel like even she'd look at that and be like, "Dude, I lived on a desert planet scavenging for my entire life. Fuck, I'm gonna give myself some fucking pleasure now.
You want me to what? Never do anything? No, no, no.
I also realize I'm swearing a lot. I'm sorry.
I don't care. We're not monetized.
F-bombs.
Uh,
F-bombs are encouraged. All the F-bombs.
Yeah. But yeah, like my whole thing with I guess we are now moving on to the idea of, is Rey going to become a Jedi? Uh, in that sense, I kind of, I don't know. I'm very, the Jedi teachings as a whole kind of make me uncomfortable because they're incredibly restrictive and they remind me of growing up Catholic, which uh I feel like that contributed to the downfall of a lot of good people. Just that incredibly restrictive lifestyle, and not allowing to feel emotion and whatnot. Like I just feel like that's not I mean, I know you're allowed to feel like emotion, but it's you know what I mean.
Within
But
limits, yeah.
yeah, within limits. And like I get it, life's all about moderation and whatnot, but at the same time, like people are inherently emotional, and I think training them to not be emotional is how you end up with someone like Anakin Skywalker, who just can't. He can't be non-emotional. He's just, that's who he is as a person, because you saw when he was a kid, he didn't seem that emotional. He was like, "Yippee! I'm gonna get to go home." Like he was a very like happy-go-lucky kid. And it wasn't until like he was given things and had the sense of loss that he was actually able to you know really get pissed off. And I just feel like if someone had been there for Anakin to be like, "Yes, you're feeling loss, and that's understandable, and I understand that you have fear," and if someone had actually like guided him through that as part of the Jedi teachings, I don't think we would have ended up with Vader. And so my whole thing is I just don't like the Jedi, man. Like I'm just super not into the Jedi. And I don't want Rey to become one, because I think that she herself has never really allowed herself the time to feel emotion, because she has been worried about survival her entire life. And I think now that she has the opportunity to really sit down and think about like what her life is and who she is, and everything around her, it's this sort of situation where I think she is going to start feeling emotion. And I even see in the trailers where it looks like she's getting angry, where she's very calm and meticulous and whatnot, and not letting the saber hit the rock, and then she just slices straight through it. And I absolutely think that's out of anger. You can hear her grunting in those trailers, and I just don't think that the Jedi way is the way for Rey. I definitely think she needs something a little more balanced and more towards the center of the Force than at either extreme.
So
That
then,
was a really long rant. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. So then, do you think Rey is gonna go dark? Because everyone is like, Rey's gonna go dark. That's what the advertising says. Rey's gonna go dark. Rey's gonna go dark. I'm like, I don't quite
I
buy
think
it.
that's actually the one misdirection we're actually getting in the advertising, is the idea that she has to be one or the other.
And I think that that's the audience expectation that the marketing department is playing with. Because like the rabid shippers and the ship wars of the dynamic of Rey and Kylo. It's kind of like a niche thing, and it's really isolated, especially mostly to Tumblr. But it's isolated compared to like the mass general audience and what people think. And especially with the novelization where Snoke is talking directly to Rey, or it's implied that he's talking to Rey to get her to kill him after their snow their fight on Starkiller in the snow. That
Actually, just as a point of contention, I don't think that's actually true anymore.
I saw the tweet too, but we don't know. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't buy Rey being dark. Like, what's the point of going? Maz saying the light. It's always been there. What would be the point of that if Rey was just going to say, "Oh, screw it, I'm going to go dark"? You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. Um, as far as that whole thing where Snoke is in her head and talking to her from the novelization, she was asked about that in an interview, and she seemed completely like confused and shocked. by that idea, which I think may suggest that she knows something in The Last Jedi that would suggest that Snoke has no interest in her over Kylo, which I guess we can get into later because I already have ideas of what that means. But I don't quite believe that. I feel like those words were more so the dark side within her, trying to well up and take power over Kylo, and she may have done it had it not been for the planet splitting them apart. So
I think he has interest in Rey in that it's another thing that he can use against Kylo Ren, because even in that trailer, they reference back to the Force Awakens and are like, look at them together. Look at this one scene. Remember that scene where he's pleading about the girl to Snoke? Yeah, yeah. Um, do I think that it's going to keep going? Like that that Rey means anything to Snoke? Potentially, but not.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that Snoke, pulled a Plagueis and made her of the Force and then dropped her off on Jakku. And yeah, I don't. But it's interesting, that after, um, Snoke was told about Rey because of her deflecting Kylo's, mind probe. He's like, huh, who is this?
I think
Yeah.
at best, Rey is a tool for Snoke to kind of get Kylo Ren more focused. But other than that, I don't really think he cares about her. If that was his voice in her head in the novelization, I think that was him testing her, and I think she failed. And so he's like, no, I'm going to go with the kid who can actually kill people.
Speaking of going to the dark side, the other big one that's going around, do you guys think that Luke is going to go dark?
I think Luke is sitting there not knowing exactly how to describe what he's done and how he acts, and that he fears some of the things that he feels is dark, but not necessarily. But the thing is, he has the black and white view of the light side and the dark side, so he's not sure. Like he knows exactly how angry and I was like forceful he can get. See Return of the Jedi, so he knows it's within him, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's bad, but he doesn't know how to deal with that.
I think part of the whole thing that's going to end up being a focal point of this movie is that the concept of the light and the dark is going to really be kind of what's the word, just trashed. Like I think Luke maybe has given up the idea of the light and the dark, and only stands for control versus chaos. And especially if it ends up being true that Ben blew up the academy because he didn't have a good grip on his powers, I think that could cause Luke to become obsessed with the idea of control. So I don't know if darkness is really the right word for it, especially because Mark straight up said like, no, he's not going dark. But we know how Mark likes to be, so I'm wondering if he doesn't go dark, but he's not exactly light anymore.
That's fair. That's fair. I, don't, I don't think he's going to go dark, but I want him to go dark. I want it so badly. I want to see the fan reaction of Luke igniting a red lightsaber. And speaking of a red lightsaber, why do you think he has that red kyber crystal? Because that is confirmed. It's on the Funko Pop. Luke has a red kyber crystal.
I've decided that it's Ben's original kyber crystal, that it got damaged, and he has half of it, and Kylo Ren has the other half, and that's why his saber is so unstable, because he only has half a crystal.
I'm down with that.
Because on the box art, you can see that it's a cracked red crystal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Just food for thought. I know a lot of people, are convinced that it's Vader's crystal, but I don't really, because like rewatching Return of the Jedi, Luke cuts off Vader's hand, and his lightsaber goes down a mine shaft. It's the same mine shaft that Palpatine got thrown into.
Well, what about this? Because I've been thinking about it. What if it's Luke's original crystal, and that Kylo has took it, turning it red because that's how you do it. But then Luke takes it back Or maybe that's why it's cracked, because it breaks in half, and Luke takes half, and Kylo takes half. But that's why Luke isn't shown with his green saber, because the crystal has turned red. It's now around his neck, so he no longer has one, and he didn't want to go try to find another crystal.
That would be amazing.
I guess I'm kind of curious as to. I just want to know about Ben's lightsaber before he had the cracked Kyber crossguard version. Like, I wonder if he had one. I want to know what his lightsaber color was, and if that's the, like, third lightsaber color that Ryan says we're gonna, or maybe not third, but Ryan said that we're going to see an additional lightsaber color, like a new lightsaber color in The Last Jedi. And I wonder if that's for the trilogy, for the movies, for the canon, or what, because I'm wondering if Ben had, like, a different color lightsaber than the standards we see normally.
Didn't Daisy say she wanted a pink sparkly lightsaber?
Yes.
With a disco ball on top.
Yes. But, I don't know, I'm standing here shouting, yellow, yellow, yellow. But we'll see. But we've seen yellow not on screen, but not in a movie, I believe.
I think on the fight on Geonosis, you see, like, yellows and oranges in the big Jedi fight.
Well, then we have no more colors except for black and white.
Well, but if it's the canon, we've seen black and white.
Exactly. So that's why I'm like, you've run out of colors.
I mean, if you get into, like, the legends, well, that's the thing, is, like, on the teaser poster, the Rey's saber goes from blue to purple to red, and I'm like, would Ryan introduce a tricolor saber? Do you think that would happen?
I don't. I gotta be honest.
I'm just like, what if it's hiding in plain view? I'm kind of the belief that the way it was phrased, because it says, Rey has a blue saber and Kylo Ren has a red saber, and Ryan teases we may see a new color in this movie. I think it's new for the trilogy.
I agree.
Not necessarily the movies. In which case, god damn it, I want nothing more than for Kylo's crossguard saber to be destroyed, him to pull the Skywalker saber to him in the midst of the fight, and then Rey to build her own double-sided purple lightsaber out of her staff.
Or just for her to build her own and have it be, or I don't know, if we end it with Kylo's saber destroyed and Rey has hers and she hands it to him and is like, this is your saber. Like, it is yours. I need to build mine.
Well, I mean, but that's kind of the thing, is, like, I think we may have that whole, like, mirrored scene where he tries to pull the Skywalker saber to him before and the Force won't let him. It would be really interesting if in this movie, because there's a point where Rey gets knocked out, from what I can tell, just from the behind-the-scenes training, where I was talking in the last episode, I believe, where I think she gets her bruise based on the training video. So if she gets knocked out, and his saber gets destroyed, I could easily see him being like, crap. And so he tries to pull the Skywalker saber to him in order to still defend himself. Because she's knocked out, she can't do anything with it. And he actually succeeds because the Force is like, yeah, you're a good guy now. I just think that would be like poetic cinema.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Why wasn't I allowed to write this fucking movie?
Well, doesn't Snoke has a black kyber crystal ring? I don't think that's been confirmed yet, but making Star Wars, which is by far the most reliable, I don't think they've been wrong about anything so far. They say that Snoke has a big black kyber crystal on his hand.
Do you think that's a remnant of the Darksaber, or do you think that's something else?
I love how you said the Darksaber, and I'm like, isn't that thing that they talked about in Clone Wars that killed?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Well, I thought the Darksaber pertains specifically to Mandalore and Mandalorians.
I mean, It could. I mean, it depends. Like if Snoke is like just like taking over homeworlds and stuff like that, like he could have kidnapped it as a relic for himself. He could have had the Knights of Ren kidnap it as a relic for himself. It just kind of depends. But I just wonder because we don't see black kyber crystals very often in canon. I think it would be very difficult to explain the dark saber to the general audience.
Well, you wouldn't be able to.
Uh, I think they would just have to play it off as another black lightsaber, and then like the visual dictionary would have to be like, oh yeah, by the way, this is the dark saber.
I mean, it's a thing to throw in for people that have seen Clone Wars and have seen Rebels and all this stuff, and they're like, "Oh, cool, yeah, we're part of it." Whereas people who haven't are just like, "Black, we can do that, okay."
I mean, who knows? I don't want Snoke to have a lightsaber because I hate him, but I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I just don't see him as the kind of person who, unless he actively manages to drain someone's energy and become younger and more spry, I don't really see how he could possibly be active enough to fight. But then again, I watched Yoda and Palpatine have a fight, so who knows? So yeah, this started out about Luke Skywalker going dark, didn't it? And then it kind of transferred into what is the new lightsaber color.
I mean, it's all stuff that's
Um,
been hinted at.
yeah, I mean that's the problem is like there's so much that could happen. I just don't know if it would happen. All I know is I want Kylo Ren to have the Skywalker saber at the end of The Last Jedi and Rey to make her own saber.
If she made her own, traditionally that's always in the third movie.
Or between the second and third movie.
Yeah, but like she would reveal it in the third movie though.
Yes. Oh, yes. The problem is they kind of revealed a purple-bladed Rey staff saber as a blade builder way too early. So, uh, unless people are just like, ah, that's a blade builder, it would never happen. And then, oh, holy shit, it happened. That's kind of a big spoiler to give out as a toy.
Dude, I would love it if that design became canon because we haven't seen a pike come canon because they're in or no, it's in Clone Wars and it's in not Rebels, but they're in Clone Wars because the Guardians of the Jedi Temple have those and they're traditionally yellow. And everyone assumes that Rey would have a Maul style double bladed lightsaber. But I'm like, I think that a pike would fit her so much better than having a double bladed lightsaber.
I guess I'd have to like rewatch her fighting style again. But it would make sense that, she would have one end that she could use as like blunt force and another she could have as a blade.
I actually wanted to ask both of you guys, what do you think the first shot of the movie is going to be when it pans down? What are we going to see? Are we going to see Dakar, Octo, or the Supremacy?
They said that they literally started filming and it's supposed to take place right afterwards. So I think we are going to begin, even with knowing what the first words are with the end of The Force Awakens. Like, we're going to get literal pickup with, here, take this and loot, and then the we're not whatever it is. I mean, actually, we could still see it as that was another option I just thought of. We don't have to, the we're not is not going to, those are the first words. That does not mean it's the first scene. So for all we know, the first scene is Luke seeing that, looking at it, and turning and walking away, and Rey not saying anything, but just sort of looking lost. And then we cut to, in a fun PowerPoint transition, somewhere else.
I I mean that's a great point. I personally think that the very first scene is going to be Dakar because of Ryan's whole statement where he was like, where Jimmy Kimmel was like, so we're going to start the movie exactly where it left off, right? And he goes, yeah, around that time. Which I think suggests that it's not on Octo, but at a similar time, which I fully expect the movie to begin with the assault on Dakar, but I also think that we need to get to Octo pretty early, but I don't know. I don't know.
I'm actually going to take the third route. that it's going to open to the supremacy because Pablo at the Chilean Comic-Con said that one of the first things you see, I almost said Empire, in The Last Jedi is Snoke Kylo reporting to Snoke what happened and that he was defeated.
So now we're basically like Mike Zero. We're taking all the options so we can say we were right.
That was not my intent.
We're all right. That is what this means.
Well, from a certain point of view.
And then watch, like, none of us are right. It's option 4, and it's just a pan of Carrie Fisher's face saying,
Oh.
And then,
yeah, I mean, I think that all three of us have, good arguments, and all three options have merit because, they're all kind of based on things we've heard and things we've interpreted. So I don't think one of us is any more likely to be right than the other than whoever actually is right. But, and it doesn't matter. But, yeah, I think there's a lot of good options there. Especially when you factor in the words, we're not is kind of a, I don't know. I mean, it's so generic, It could start with Rey on Octo and Luke just walking away and Rey just being like, we're not leaving without you. And it could be on Dakar where, someone says, we're not going to survive this attack unless we leave now. And it could easily be on the Supremacy where Snoke is like, we're not going to let this mistake, define us or, something like that. I don't know. Like, it's so generic, which I think is why Ryan was like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. Because if the first word was Rey, I think that would be a little bit more obvious.
Well, I don't know. What if the first shot was Finn waking up in the back to suit and he goes, Rey! And we've seen that, and that wouldn't be a spoiler.
That would be a spoiler because actually Rey could be the first word and take place on all three places because it could easily just be like her being like, Rey, I'm Rey.
well, what if I mean, kind of going with the Finn in the back to suit, what if it is, I mean, it's the introduction to like Dakar getting attacked, but it's almost a flashback in Finn's mind, so it's inside Finn's head, and he thinks that he's won the lightsaber battle and is like, we're not leaving without you, the same thing, but to Rey, and he thinks it's on Starkiller, and he's like picking her up and saving her.
I don't know that they do that, but that would be pretty sick to see.
And then it cuts to him being in the back to suit, asleep, with everybody getting attacked.
Yeah, that would make me really sad. But so do we want to talk Resistance side stuff with we know that Haldo is more than likely going to be taking over some aspect of the Resistance, if not the whole thing. What do we think, leads that to happen, and how that's going to go?
I have a feeling there's going to be something with the fact that Dakar almost got blown up. That somebody in the Resistance is going to bring that up, and Leia's going to try to defend herself and defend all of her actions. And maybe Emmeline comes in and tries to defend Leia, saying, like, I know her, we did all this stuff together, we've known each other since childhood. And it becomes this thing where the person defending Leia gets chosen as the replacement. And that just happens. And Leia is like, she can't wish it on someone better because she thinks Emmeline is going to have the Resistance's best interest at heart. But she's sad she's lost control.
I agree with that, and I also want to add to that, I also don't think that Leia is in good standing with the Republic because she lied about her heritage. Because, in Bloodline, it was known that Leia lied. And that was one of the big questions that was posed to Leia after everything was revealed when Lady Scindian went behind her back and casted that message across the galaxy of why did you lie? Why did you not tell us?
And she has no good and her answer is pure and simple and good, but at the same time, it's almost an honest to like I had to you wouldn't trust me if I didn't. They're like, well, we don't trust you now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I definitely think it's probably I feel like Leia's gonna end up stepping down based on like emotional reasons. Like, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. And I also think that it may be a thing from the Republic that's kind of, I mean, the Republic is kind of in shambles right now. There's very few people alive who are a part of the Galactic Senate, so it's kind of one of those things right now. But I think it could be one of those situations where what's left of the Republic is like, you're supposed to be fighting this war for us and you let us get destroyed. And so that's when Haldo comes in.
Is anyone kind of interested or amused that our discussion of what's going to happen in The Last Jedi kind of follows the marketing for the movie? The movie is so heavy on the Force side, and we're like, we don't know what to say about the Resistance side.
We don't know what to say on the Resistance side. They haven't told us a damn thing. Who knows?
I think a lot of people are going in with theories about Rey and Kylo Ren and Luke, and some theories about Finn and Poe and Rose and Amy Lynn, but not a lot. And EJ sort of left in this corner like, oh yeah, you're in it, I guess.
I don't know. I think DJ is just going to be a plot element. Like he serves to move the story forward. He serves to get Finn back into the First Order. You know what I mean?
So DJ is going to be the Poe Dameron of
Kind, kind of. But I mean, how could they? And I love Benicio del Toro. And don't get me wrong, but like, there's so many new characters. There's so many new points of view. There's so many stories that are having to weave in and out of each other. By having another character with another story, it would be too much and too complicated. Now, I know a lot of people thought that DJ stood for Dark Jedi and that he's going to be the big bad and it's not going to be Snoke. It's actually going to be DJ. I don't know. I get the feeling because he wasn't at any of the press releases. None. He has given no interviews that I've seen. I just don't think he really has that big of a part in this.
He's doing beer commercials right now.
Yeah, like how busy could he really be?
But I mean, part of it may also be that he had a bigger part and it was going to be great, and then they edited the movie and they're like, well, I guess you're not in it so much.
Or conversely, he's supposed to be the hugest surprise ever, and that's why he's not allowed to talk about anything right now.
Or maybe they learned from when Phasma. They're like, everybody's like, yay, Phasma's going to do things and be so cool and be so awesome, and they're like, you're in it for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I just don't really think that DJ's going to have near as big a part as people are expecting. I think they're going to meet up with him on Canto Bight, and I think they're going to infiltrate the First Order together, and I think he may snitch them out when it becomes convenient for him, because they do have that really strange, like, one shot of him where he's kind of looking around kind of strangely, and the stormtroopers are behind him in that big, like, factory area. So I'm just kind of wondering if maybe he's part of like why they get captured.
I agree. I don't know what else to say other than pulling it like Adam at the press conference. I agree because we don't know anything. Like, I'm impressed because like by this time last year we knew what was going to happen in The Last Jedi. Not The Last Jedi. Rogue One. And the year before that we knew what was going to happen in The Force Awakens, and we don't know anything.
I also think that comes with practice. Like, this cast knows what to say and not what to say, what to say and what not to say now.
Oh yeah, they definitely know, and like you can see in some interviews them looking at each other like, "You're not gonna say that, right? We know better. We know better now." And and then looking away.
Let's see. So, anything else we have to say on DJ?
No, I mean, I don't know much about him, so I can't really speculate much on him.
So then, what do you guys think is going to happen with like Finn and Rose and their mission to Canto Bight, and how? And do we think Finn Rose is going to be canon?
I don't really know, man, because I feel like on one hand we kind of know the entire plot up until infiltrating the Resistance, in the sense that they go to Canto Bight to find DJ. They end up in a whole lot of trouble. They have to get on a Fathier and escape. And then they get back to the Resistance, and then they leave to infiltrate the First Order, and then they get captured at some point. Like, I feel like that's pretty well spelled out as far as what's happening, just based on leaks and various media. I just don't know what happens once they get captured. I don't know if Rose survives because I don't see her anywhere in that fight between Finn and Phasma, but I also don't see any stormtroopers. So I don't know, man. It's kind of up in the air at that point.
There was a leak, one that came out when we filmed our shipping episode, that we alluded to, but we didn't go in depth because it was already like 3.5 hours. But uh, someone posted on, again, Reddit, that Rose gets killed, that Rose is executed, and Finn gets pissed, and that's what starts the duel between Finn and Phasma.
I mean,
I hope it's not true.
I hope it's not true. I can see it happening in a very terrible way. They're introducing so many new characters again that they would have to carry on through to episode 9 that I don't think all of them will make it to episode 9 because either they're going to lose importance, which means they do something stupid, or they're going to die. And that's it. There's no in between. So I don't know how they're going to handle that.
Is Kelly returning to episode 9? Because some of the actors have already said publicly that they're returning.
He hasn't said, I don't think.
I think we know, Rey and Finn and all them for sure, and I don't know what Donald's doing with his life, other than bitching about the fact that he didn't get to hang out with Adam Driver. But yeah, I don't know. And I just hate the idea of killing her off, and fridging her basically to advance Finn's storyline, because it's almost guaranteed Paige is going to die just based on that one shot from behind the scenes where we see someone in a gunner's outfit falling down a tall row of bombs and whatnot. It's almost guaranteed she's going to die. And so if Rose dies in addition to that, we don't get Asians in Star Wars very often, and when they do, they die. And so it's kind of this thing where, I need Rose to survive, not as, a social justice sort of thing, but because what does it say if, we just keep killing off Asians in Star Wars? And on top of that, I love Rose as a character from what we've seen already. Which I guess isn't much, but I really like Kelly Marie Tran, and I want to see her in more Star Wars centric media. I just don't think I would trust Ryan after that if he's content to fridge a character like that.
I think we need to see what's going on with them, and I think we need to see what happens with this. And I wonder if maybe they're not allowed to say anything right now. Maybe Kelly has it as part of her contract where she cannot say if she's going to be in the next movie because they're doing a will she live, won't she live? Because she's done a lot of interviews, but it's almost like she hasn't done as many as they had, John and Daisy do when they got introduced. And I don't know. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. It almost feels like there's less marketing for this one. There's less interviews, but at the same time, I could just not be as focused into them as I was.
It's kind of an oddball question, but do you think that Game of Thrones has kind of made us a little jaded, going, oh, they're gonna die. Oh, they're gonna die. Everyone's gonna die.
I think the thing is that we actually haven't had a lot of, how many, named characters died in Star Wars,
Boba Fett? What?
Well, we don't know if he did.
I'm Qui-Gon
But
Jinn,
so we had Obi-Wan die, and then who else?
Qui-Gon Jinn, Yoda, Anakin Skywalker.
No, I'm talking about in a single trilogy.
In a single
Count Dooku.
Vader,
Vader,
Sidious.
Yoda,
Count Dooku.
in a single trilogy, Jen. God damn it!
Dooku's in one trilogy.
But we're talking the original one.
Oh, fine. You keep saying a single trilogy. I'm there's one.
We're sitting here Obi-Wan, Vader, Yoda, and you're Qui-Gon, Dooku.
Look, you wanted You said who's died in a single trilogy. You didn't say the original trilogy. So I'm like, yes, bring in the deaths of the prequels. Mace Windu.
Padme.
Okay, well, I don't want to count the prequel trilogy because lots of people died in that. Like, a lot. It had a huge death count.
Okay, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Fair, okay. Owen and Beru died. And then some star pilots died. Then Obi-Wan.
Technically, Bail Organa died.
Oh, okay. The entire destruction of Alderaan.
And the Death Star.
I'm like, Tarkin.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so maybe there is a lot of death. But we're talking about people we actively care about. Like, we didn't really know too much about Bail Organa at that point. So yeah, as far as important characters go, we killed off some aunt and uncles and the crazy hermit from, down the way. Who died in the second movie? Anyone?
Yoda. No, wait, he died in the third movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he died in the third.
I don't think anyone died in the second movie. Other than, like...
It's weird that it's considered the darkest movie, yet no one dies.
I like how I'm sitting here, I'm like, Luke's hand.
The Skywalker special.
Luke's sense of self-worth.
I mean,
the point I'm making is that, like, we're sitting here expecting, like...
died.
Okay. We're going a little far.
I love trying to find a death. I'm like, the Tauntaun!
Yeah. So yeah, I just, we are kind of used to death in our media with like you said, Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead and whatnot. Like, beloved characters die. It's what people do. I don't know if we should expect that from Ryan. I don't know if we have a reason to. I don't know if he's given us that reason. And I feel like Kelly has just been really excited about Rose. I just can't imagine them just killing her off. That seems so... I don't know, man. It just seems so pointless. It seems so pointless to bring her in for this one little thing and then, oh, well, now she's dead. And it was because she was fridged to advance Finn's story. And then I especially don't want her to die because I don't want to hear the damn Finn Rays talking for the next 2 years about how, oh, Rose is dead. That means Finn has to get with Rey. No, it fucking doesn't. I don't know, man. I feel like it's possible, and I feel like since Ryan only has the one movie, he has to get one of his deaths in. But, like, I just don't really see a character that should die, that really has a narrative point to dying at this point, other than, Leia, but I don't got it, man. I can't think of a valid reason to kill off Rose, especially if they kill off Paige as well.
I truly don't know. That's really, I don't want her to die, because I want Finn to be happy. They're so damn cute together, and they have such good chemistry. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that would do for Finn's story. You've seen Finn be afraid, but the only time you really see him angry is with Kylo, who he doesn't really have that personal connection to, versus with Phasma, who he's known for his whole life, or most of his life.
Yeah. And
what would that do for him and their duel? I can't wait to see their duel. It looks so good.
He looks so pissed.
So excited. It's like that Raylo crack where it's like, sign me the fuck up!
Yes, I love that video. I've watched that more than the trailer. It's so good.
But yeah, long story short, I hope Rose lives because I love Kelly Marie Tran, and if I could see more of her, I would be so much happier.
Agreed. I really only have one more question that I can think of. Who's getting their hand cut off?
Luke, the other one.
Phasma!
No, it's funny.
I know it's considered the Skywalker special, but I don't think Kylo needs to get his hand cut off, and he's the only Skywalker. So it's like someone else has to do it, and I suggest that it's Phasma.
Phasma would be kind of cool and interesting.
She'd
be like, yes.
There was an old crummy leak on Reddit that said that Phasma got her hand cut off. That Finn does it because he's pissed, but when her helmet comes off, and he sees that she's a real person, he lets her go and lets her live.
I like that.
That would be awesome.
He just stands there, does nothing for the entire movie, and at the very end, it's like this one, like, why? Why is my hand gone? Like, what did I do?
Kylo better be the one to cut it off.
Yeah, it's just like he's leaving, and it's like, oh, and here's your goodbye present.
Uh,
But that would be awesome.
Speaking of like leaks and stuff like that, the leak that we were kind of referencing in the shipping episode talks about how Poe is going to go rogue and start bombing first order, spouse and child communities. What do we think about that?
I mean, it makes sense. Poe has a lot of anger, and Amy Lynn's like, that's reason, and he goes, or blow shit up. I'm gonna go blow shit up. And that's that.
I can easily see Poe becoming, that sort of fanatical person who's like, well, if y'all aren't going to do anything, I am. And just kind of takes his squadron to go on like a bombing run to destroy some First Order houses. But, God, I know they've been talking about how like the lines between good and evil and, darkness and light and whatnot are kind of getting blurred, and you're not really sure what character belongs to what side now. And I think it'd be interesting if Poe was included in that, in someone who, you thought he was a hero, and now he's kind of like, you know what? Forget these children. We're gonna blow them up.
Well, I mean, it would make Poe more morally ambiguous. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Ryan and Daisy and Adam, I think even John, have all said that the line between what is good and what is bad is really going to blur. That good guys are going to do bad things and bad guys are going to do good things.
I mean, it makes sense for why Leia would slap him. I know a lot of times we were speculating that it may have to do with him talking shit on Ben Solo, but it could be a thing where he comes back and Leia's like, why? Why would you do that? And just slaps the shit out of him.
I absolutely believe that is why Leia slaps him.
Yeah.
100%.
Which
Because,
means we believe that this is happening.
Yeah.
well, I mean, not just because the leak had a whole lot more than just, or supposed leak, had a whole lot more than just Poe, but I found Poe's arc to be the most believable and the most in character, especially given his issues from the comics, and that Poe in the comics, he's very fanatical.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
That leak also said that Snoke. That's the one that says that Snoke doesn't really exist. That Luke is Snoke, and I don't. As much as I want it to be true, I
I don't think
don't
it
think.
says Luke is Snoke. I think it says that Snoke flees and Luke shows up.
Gotcha. I'd have to pull it up again. I didn't save it, but and maybe you're right. You know what I mean? I just tried to remember like the major points of the leak. But on kind of that note, after I read that leak, I saw one of the TV spots, and it had the shot of Snoke's face, and you get to see his like ice blue eyes, and I'm like, huh, who else has bright icy blue eyes? Huh, interesting. But food for thought. I don't think it's going to be canon, but it's an interesting theory, and I would like it to be canon.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Um, do we think Leia is going to actively die in this movie, or what's happening?
I don't think she's actively going to die. I think it's going to be something maybe where it's a quiet exit of this is no longer the world for me. Um, Something along the lines of it leaves Leia being alive as a possibility, but it's an exit for Carrie in a way. Like, I don't know how they'll be able to do it with what they filmed, but maybe it was something where they were already going to end 8 in her like retirement, quote unquote, and 9, which would have been her movie, was basically everybody coming to her and saying, "No, that was wrong. You need to come and fix everything." Uh, or her coming to the rescue in 9, but I almost would like it to be sort of. I don't know how they could do it without filming after scene though, but like the quiet, I'm gonna go live my life, maybe on Naboo, maybe I can see the home of my mother, and then having whoever is talking to her like leave and go on, because Daisy has said that there's a very emotional scene with her and Carrie that now is even worse because there will never be another.
Agreed. I don't know how they should do it, how they should end Carrie's last movie while still serving the plot, but while also being respectful and tasteful to her memory and to her wishes. You know, I don't think that they're going to show her dying on camera, but I do think that she is going to die, but it's going to be done with through clever editing and reshoots, because there were some reshots done. And if I remember correctly, the reshots were done a couple months after Carrie passed.
I don't personally think that they're going to have Leia die in this because I think Ryan said that they didn't make any changes to Leia's story. Leia's Leia's movie was going to be 9, so I don't think they could have referenced anything to her specifically, dying in this movie without completely ruining that. And if they didn't change that, then I don't think she could die. However, I'm of the belief that there's going to be a more significant time jump between 8 and 9, and they could have possibly set up something that could lead to Leia's death. Like, I know there was a rumor that she's going to end up in a coma at the very end or something like that, but I do think there's going to be a bigger time jump. I'm assuming like 2 years. I could easily see it, during that 2 years, something happened to Leia, like she passed away and whatnot. Or, I could happily see them just not killing her off altogether and just saying that she retired somewhere.
Because you could, if this is the beginning of the Ben Solo redemption arc, and then 9 is the culmination of it, you would want a scene of like completely redeemed Kylo/Ben with Leia. But maybe you could also end 9 almost with, what are you going to go do now? It's like, I'm going to go tell my mother that, she can be proud of me again or something like that. And you end it so you can reference Leia without having Leia actually be in the movie. Because that's going to be an issue, is that you have 2 characters that are tied to hers by blood, and how to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's a sticky situation, and I do not envy Lucasfilm.
Nope. Absolutely.
But on that kind of a somber note, is there anything else we wanted to bring up?
Uh, I guess the last thing that I believe we've already discussed at length and everyone knows we're rooting for to happen is whether or not Rey and Kylo are going to team up and whether or not it will end up romantic.
I mean, yes and yes.
I think that's probably the shortest answers we could possibly give, given that we've already discussed it at length. But yeah, I think that's probably the one thing we're the most confident about as far as all of this goes, is that uh, it's near obvious that Rey and Kylo will end up teaming up in some way for this movie. And as far as the romance goes, I don't know if there's going to be anything overt about a romantic relationship between them, but I'm fairly confident we'll at least see the hints of the start of some sort of like growing affection between the two.
Well, I don't know if I'm just gonna be more optimistic, but if that spoiler is true that we talked about before we started recording, I mean, why? I don't know. Maybe it's because I want it to happen so badly that it clouds my judgment, and I could, I freely admit that. But why would that happen if not to serve to create some, tension between them, but not like I want to kill you, you want to kill me tension, but a different sort of tension.
I completely agree. I think that makes the most sense. Yeah, I think that's pretty much, we've discussed most of the speculation that we think is gonna, be the points of contention as far as the movie goes and the questions we kind of want answered. We didn't bring up Snoke, but I think that's mostly because Ryan said we're not really delving into Snoke too much in this movie, so there's really no point speculating on what answers we'll get on him. And obviously, I think there's a good chunk of the movie we can't even begin to ask questions about because we don't know anything about it. But yeah, I think we've kind of gone over all the major things we have questions about. So yeah.
See in a couple weeks how right or wrong we are.
Exactly.
I'm so excited.
Listen, gonna listen to this and go, ugh. Oh, we were
I
so
hope
wrong.
not because I'm pretty pleased with all of our predictions. I'm like, fuck yeah.
Oh, so am I. Like the Raylo community has pretty much been on point for pretty much everything. So
Oh
I
yeah,
hope.
dude, it's insane. But ladies, I'll see you on the other side of the war. And to the audience, thanks for listening and subscribing and whatnot. We definitely appreciate it. It's always been a dream of mine to have a podcast and to do something Star Wars related, and so this is just really exciting for me, and I'm sure it's exciting for you ladies too. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Very.
it.
So I'm gonna end up dividing our podcast into seasons, so you can consider this the season finale, as this is the last episode that we are going to be putting out before The Last Jedi airs. Last Jedi debuts. Um, but yeah, we're going to be on a little bit of a brief hiatus while we wait for the movie to come out and things to kind of calm down. But we'll see you soon. And yeah.
Once
That's
again,
it.
yep. Thank you for listening to us, and we can't wait to get together and just talk about the movie after 2 years.
All
So I guess that's
right.
it.
Until next time, I'm Amber.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Jane.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.